Hey everybody, thanks for joining me here and thanks for checking out my podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and click the notification bell for new episodes. You can also find Shine Without Shame on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I want to reflect back to you that I didn't know all of these details before today about your history and the earlier chapters of your life. I just had just a smidgen, of an understanding, but I'm so moved by what you're sharing because I've met you in the last few years, when I started working with Crystal and became friends with her. So I haven't only known you in this newer chapter of your life with your family and not just your wife and your children, but also your mother-in-law. And so when I think about when I've witnessed you, when I've had conversations with you, when I've witnessed you in action, I think, wow, that is a person who has a lot of faith, who wants to walk the walk, not just talk the talk, who isn't afraid to be himself and who isn't afraid to acknowledge the joy and the love that he experiences in his life and that he wants to share with others, and who is interested and has done a lot of work in your meditation. I've known that about you. And I think, wow, when I hear you share the stories and the experiences from the earlier part of your life, wow, you have no doubt been doing your work because it's so clear and evident. I mean, none of us are perfect, but I'll reflect the same to you. You talked about so kindly and lovingly about my energy and being firm in who I am. I feel the same. I would use the same exact words about you and about Crystal too. But since you're my guest today, I want to reflect that back to you. When I'm around you, it's like, oh wow, he really knows who he is, and accepts that. There's a lot of self-acceptance. And then now knowing more of your journey, it just speaks to how critical your faith has been and all the healing tools that you've had access to and the support with with the people in your life. It speaks to how it really, that healing work can be done. It's not an impossible dream. It's not an unreachable or unattainable goal. Because I think in our society, there's so much, I think with the best of intentions, there's so much, especially in Western society, about getting to know yourself, self-love, healing, mindfulness. And I'm not saying that because I don't like those ideas or those concepts. I believe in them, but I think sometimes they get turned into something that is like trendy or just kind of the word of the week or the month or whatever. And so people talk about them, but they don't always necessarily, and maybe they do find some tools. I know that people are getting into meditation and all sorts of going down all sorts of paths, to do their own mindfulness and healing work. But sometimes I don't know if people always have the support or the encouragement, or maybe even just the willingness to like stick with that and really commit to the progress, to the blood, sweat, and tears that might be a part of that process. Not for everybody. It's not always, blood, sweat, and tears for every single person. But for those of us who have had a lot of shame and a lot of heaviness and negativity in our lives, there really has to be a commitment to that journey of healing and a willingness. So you sharing what you're sharing, and also not just because the person, not just because I know you now, but I think even anybody listening or watching can hear in your voice and in the words you're choosing to use, the strength that you've cultivated. And I'm so grateful. It's a beautiful thing to witness in another human. And it also speaks again to this idea of healing. And you're using such real experiences, and sharing about this journey you've been on. I think that's so important for people to hear this and to understand and to know that there are people who they're living their lives. They're doing the best they can. They are cultivating a stronger faith. And for people who maybe haven't embraced the idea, of God or religion, okay, that's fine. I think there is something though about going inward and really starting to take a look at, like you said, what's going on, like what you've done with meditation, what's going on inside, and start to acknowledge that you want to feel better about your life, that you want to feel love and you want to experience joy. And I think this conversation in my mind is a perfect example of someone's journey, and that it can really be done. Anybody can do it. You don't have to have loads of money and you don't have to go to the most expensive therapist. Although sure, if you can afford a therapist, wonderful. Not everybody has those sorts of resources, but there are a lot of ways, accessible ways and tools to turn to take this journey, to take the first step. And I want to acknowledge what you said also about meditation. I went through something similar when I started to meditate. I loathed meditation when I started. And I started actually at my work. I brought in a meditation teacher and we had a class or two, and I participated. This was a former job, and I just felt awful. Every time I finished meditating, I felt awful. I was stressed. My heart rate was up. And I told this to some coworkers and they said, maybe, wait, what are you talking about? You're supposed to be relaxed and calmed. What are you doing? And then I started to talk to people like Crystal and others in my life who have an expertise or have just a lot of an experience with meditation. And I started to realize, why I was feeling not so great about it wasn't because of the meditation itself. It was because, like what you said, when you sit quietly with yourself, when you go inward and you're willing to take a look around, you're going to see things, you're going to experience, you're going to be reminded of, oh gosh, I haven't thought about that experience or that memory in a long time. And ugh, I don't really like it. I don't really want to deal with this. But fortunately, I had people and I had the tools to work through that. And it was just like, Tiffany, this is just temporary. You're just getting clear with what's going on. It's not like the meditation itself is harming you. It's just making you aware of your inner life. And that is also an aspect I would be curious to hear you talk about in terms of your meditation experiences, because I do think while it's very legitimate and completely sound to use meditation as a way to calm yourself, as a way to lower your blood pressure, lower your stress, clear your mind, even as people often say, nothing wrong with that. And I think, yes, that absolutely can be beneficial. But to me, that's like, if you're talking about like your most beautiful spiritual house that you want to enter, that's just like wiping your shoes off at the front door, getting yourself ready to enter, ring the doorbell. There's a whole nother aspect to meditation that is way beyond like calming yourself, relaxing yourself, de-stressing. Again, totally legitimate use of meditation. But to me, that just barely scratches the surface. There's so much more to the process and so much more healing that can happen. I would be grateful to hear you talk about meditation and how that part of your journey really moved you forward in your life.
Absolutely. A couple points that I'm glad you brought up is that when you spend that time with yourself in the dark meditating, I made it sound kind of romanticized and like it was easy. No, it was not easy. You see the things that hurt. You cry. You come out of that meditation crying. And that was essentially my beginning of with this experience is that I would just come out of it and cry, and I would make these connections of, oh, that's a really dark thing that I think about myself. And we had talked about this a few days ago back, talking about checking out. Sometimes we numb ourselves to those things, and I think that that is a big reason why we need meditation, because we numb ourselves with our cell phone, we numb ourselves with even just socializing with people, staying busy, staying at work a little later. All of these things that we can do. I've even had friends that we've talked about, using video games as a way to numb ourselves from reality and not facing what we're really thinking. So meditation, like you said, as a beginning tool, it was my way to look around and see what it is that I'm really thinking, because you would be surprised how much you're locking away. You're locking away a lot of things that you're not realizing, and you're going to sit there, as I did, looking in the mirror in the bathroom saying, why am I so lonely? Why am I crying right now? I don't understand. What is this feeling? If you're having these kind of emotions and you don't understand why, when you should be happy, if you're around people that should be making you happy, that this is supposedly your family unit, your support unit, but yet somehow you're sitting there feeling completely left out and alone, that's not because, oh, maybe you're just depressed. That's because you're not in the right unit. That's not supporting you. You're not feeling safe, you're not feeling heard, you're not feeling understood. So that was a big initial realization with meditation. As I went further in it, I my one of my earlier experiences with how deep meditation can get was, for me, I need external stimulation. Like that is, I need vibration, I need sound, because my mind will not stay still enough to really get to a point where I can meditate. And I don't know how many people will agree with that, but to me, silence is when I want to introspect, and to have vibration is when I want to connect with something greater than myself. Um, I had feelings of great peace when I had tried to just focus on what the world is feeling. And it wasn't an easy meditation to start, but you know, my wife had kind of initially told me the greatest way to feel peace is to not think about yourself anymore, to let go of that physical body, that sense of personality, everything. If you just want to feel peace for a moment, let go of all of that and just think about spirit. And oh man, so I can't remember where I heard this, but somebody said, let go of who you are for a moment, let go of all of your feelings in your body. Think about all of your attachments and all of your bills, let go of that too. Now take away all of your relationships, let that go, and eventually get to a point where you're just spirit. There's nothing else. What would you feel? You'd feel, and then I've had a lot of people say different things. But the first thing that I said was, well, I would feel love and compassion, because if I had nothing over my head, I had no body to have be shamed and looked at. If I had no bills and responsibilities and people that I had felt that needed me, there would be nothing but love and compassion towards other people, because you would see everyone as yourself. So as you see the world as yourself and you put all of that back and you take that step back, whew, sorry, it just, the visual came back to me, and this idea of connecting with the world, feeling that energy of what's going on in its purest form. To me, I know this is going to sound a little crazy to the person who doesn't meditate, but I connected with trees because they're giving life, they're giving energy, they're taking what's toxic and giving back. They're giving back what we need. And as I got deeper into the prayer, I started to just think about the entire world. I didn't think about myself. I just prayed. And I'm not saying I'm some saint that does these great prayers. No, like, please, that's not me. But I wanted to find peace, and that's where peace led me. It led me to pray for political leaders and to say, help them to feel peace and to feel compassion towards other people. And in my ears, I began to hear the creaking and swaying of the trees, and it felt so overwhelming. And I know there's deeper than that. Meditation can take you much deeper, but that sense of interconnectivity to where I can hear it in my ears woke me up, and I went, whoa, forgot completely where I was, came back to, and I was like, that was one of my earlier experiences with meditation. And that was the first time that I really said, like, there's something more to this.
Yes, I appreciate that reflection because it's something that I wish meditation wasn't something that was seen as this abstract or like outside of ourselves activity. I wish we could kind of collectively start to understand that people do walking meditations. People look out the window and they meditate. There are different ways to get deeper. Maybe you don't get as deep if you're just staring out the window, but I wish that my wish is that we start to understand and embrace meditation as just a natural part of our design as humans. Going inward or reflecting or getting, quiet, or just allowing ourselves, like you described, to let go of all the external kind of aspects of our lives and start to just get quiet or connect. That the idea of oneness is what came to mind when you were talking about connecting with the trees or connecting with what was going on in the world. It's this idea of oneness. We're all different humans. We're all in different places. We're all doing different things. We've all got our own issues and challenges, but we all are one species on the planet. And I hope that I can be a part of helping people to understand that meditation isn't an outside thing that you have to like figure out. Yes, there's a process of learning how to get deeper and making it more powerful, but it's not this like external thing that's like weird that you sort of have to like fit yourself into. It's like, no, it's a part of your nature naturally as a human
Our bodies
to
were built
meditate.
for it.
Yes. Right. Isn't the idea that our bodies are actually in the sign, in the shape of like a pentacle? Like there's the idea that like we're in the shape of a pentacle, and it sort of is representative of the earth. Even I've looked at some people's models, and our physical body, it's a reflection, I think, of the world in a sense. And I'm not articulating this super beautifully, but yes, we were designed to and it is a part of our nature, and we were built to meditate. But obviously it's not a part of the culture. At least I'm thinking of the states where we live. It's sort of seen as like an activity, and that's fine. I'm not trying to judge if you see it and use it as an activity. I guess what I'm really trying to explore here is it is just like breathing. It is breathing. It's part of who we are. It's what we do. If we just allow ourselves to not get caught up in like meditation and this is this trendy thing, and okay, forget all that. And like what you were saying, it's really about just letting go and getting to the essence of who you are. And that can be scary for people. And I think sometimes I was talking to somebody who knows a lot about meditation, and they were saying people check out, they use meditation to actually check out and to switch off their connection to themselves and to what is kind of greater than themselves. I thought, oh, that's an interesting insight.
Yeah.
People, and again, this is not not saying this as a judgment. This is about like making an observation and maybe sharing that insight with people so they can reflect on it. That sometimes people want to use meditation as a way to check out and to shut down. And again, you were describing beautifully that it is a vulnerable experience because you do have to kind of accept, oh, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on inside of me. And you do get in touch with it when you meditate. And that's why I would also encourage people. I wonder if you agree. I mean, it's okay if you want to use an app and just meditate on your own. And of course, that's beautiful. But I think if anybody is out there and they have a lot of heavy, dark stuff that they know they're going to have to deal with or that is coming up and they want to use meditation, I would just encourage people to maybe find other people maybe who have more experience in meditation. Just like for me, just to hear somebody say, Tiffany, it's just temporary. This like this kind of like yucky, like, ugh, I don't like this. To have people say it's temporary, you're just getting in touch with what's there. It won't last forever. But for people who have really, truly a lot of pain or trauma or heavy things, you do need, I feel like you do need some extra support if you're going to meditate, because just being on your own and having to deal with that, it's a lot it can be a lot to process. What do you think about that, John?
Absolutely. So I did want to talk about this, and I kept forgetting to bring it up, is that we don't all have access to a support group. In this world, it moves fast and everyone is focused on the physical. Sometimes we feel like we get left behind and we don't have that group. But that is a perceived blockade that you made for yourself. There are so many communities, so many wonderful podcasts, people who are out here just waiting for you to reach out to them. You don't have to be alone just because there's not somebody right there in front of you. We live in a beautiful time where we could connect halfway across the world to people who are willing to give their time and their experience gladly, because it's such a relieving experience. You want to give that lift to other people. You want to let them know, like, look, you're not carrying this weight anymore. You gotta put that down and leave it be. I've had fantastic people in my life. Thank God that I've had my mother-in-law, who I call, I call my mother in faith, my spiritual mother, because she's been there for all of my heavy tears and with no judgment. My wife, who has seen everything that I was doing wrong, who pointed out all of these things that were perceived blockades. She would say, like, why would you put that blockade for yourself? You are putting things on top of yourself that don't exist. Recognize this, slow down, and value yourself. And to have somebody have that much patience with somebody like me, who was incredibly neurotic, was just incredible. So I'm obviously very blessed in that respect. But I want to share to the listener that if that isn't the case, that you just don't find yourself in a place where there is someone. I found myself there too, where there was this perceived abyss of loneliness. But you were creating that based on what people tell you is okay. What people told you, oh, you have to have this social group around you. You don't have to have that social group that is your support group around you. You don't have to have that support group at work. Maybe work is toxic, but you're stuck there for the time being and you just can't find a way out in this moment. But when you let go of trying to connect to these people who are toxic and make you feel like you're lesser than you are, you can reach out and find communities all over online that are willing to show support and help. And at the end of the day, people can help remind you when you're valuable and remind you of what you're saying that isn't correct and you're putting yourself down, and to tell you, hey, take a minute. But at the end of the day, you have to take that step. Go sit and be peaceful and quiet and meditate. And you have to look at yourself in that mirror when you're meditating. You have to say, what is it that's causing this feeling? And you need to take it and give it to God, because like I said in the beginning, he's going to make a pure version of that. He wants to he wants a relationship with you. I mean, I don't want to go too far into my religion because I don't want to push anything on anyone. But there was a verse that I had a lot of difficulty with in the Bible. And that was that they talked about how Peter would lay on Christ's chest. And I was like, that's super weird. I was like, that's a lot of affection between two guys that I just couldn't comprehend. And I was like, maybe with my father, but like not as an adult. Like I couldn't imagine that, like as a child. And it just drove me crazy. Like it was something that just took me out of the Bible. Like it was like I couldn't connect with that much love. And when I realized that when you realize that he was a part of creating you and that he was there at the beginning, he knew what was going to happen. He knows you personally and wants that personal relationship with you more than anyone else. He wants to be the one that you come to with everything. He wants to be that personal confidant, that person that takes everything that you have to say and listens patiently and carefully and talks to you. And I can say through my meditation, I have felt God speak to me and feel his comfort around me. And I know that may be hard to people who aren't feeling, they're not religious, but humor me for the moment and say this, that the human brain is healthier when we believe in something greater than ourselves. We're physically healthier when we believe in this. So humor me in at least that. And I recommend that you look into, I'm sorry that I'm going to stutter here a little bit trying to find the names, but I believe there was one called the Case for Christ. That was this detective that wrote a book about him trying to disprove the Bible, and he turned into a Christian. There was this astrophysicist that tried to disprove God, and he became a Christian. There are these people who put in a lot of work to try to disprove God and found themselves in his presence. So I ask that if you do not agree with any version of a higher power, then give it your best shot to disprove it. Give it your best shot. Go and do the research yourself, put in the work, read the text, and see how you feel afterwards. Because I can say that my best friend, the person who I lean on, the person who I want to put my head down on his chest is Christ. At the end of the day, that is who I lean on. And I guess to kind of, I don't know if I've gotten the point across, is that you can have that support group and you can surround yourself with good people. But at the end of the day, the best person that you really need to trust is Christ. Because if you try to put that pressure of Christ's relationship with you on a human being, that's a lot of weight. You're asking someone who is imperfect to hold the weight that was meant for God. You have a hole in you that was meant for God. He was meant to fill that spot. And you try to say, well, maybe my mother, no, she can't hold that weight. Maybe my father, no, he can't hold that weight. Maybe my spouse, they can't hold that weight, because if you put that weight on them, you're going to crush that relationship. You're putting a ton of weight where only God can hold that. So when we go and reminded by the beautiful people around us to take that moment and breathe, whether that be a podcast that we listen to that reminds us to breathe, whether that's a person online, whether that's a pen pal, a text buddy, someone that we know personally, someone that we trust to hear us and listen. Just remember that relationship needs to be built with yourself and with God. And if that doesn't resonate, build that relationship with yourself, and I promise you're going to find that hole that I'm talking about. And I could almost guarantee that God is going to reveal himself. And you're going to be shocked at what you find, because the world isn't just physical. There's science that proves that there are frequencies and vibrations, that everything that is around you in your room has a vibrational frequency that cannot be seen by the naked eye. So do some research on science and you'll find God. It's incredible. And I'm sorry I'm getting so far off on a tangent here. But I just kind of wanted to wrap up on saying that we need to put in that work, but at the same time, it's not work. It really isn't. It's what our bodies were designed to do, like we've said. And it doesn't have to be a chore. Like Tiffany said, it can be as easy as taking that minute to breathe and stop thinking about my outer, how I look, how I'm perceived, what's around me, and just say, you know what, I'm here in the moment. It could even be during a conversation with a friend where you plant your feet and you take deep, long breaths and you just listen. Because sometimes we can meditate while simply taking in someone else's words and being completely and fully receptive to what they're saying and ready to give a full and honest opinion back. Because if we have people in our lives who are trying to share what's happening with them, but we're so worried about how they look at us, how they're receiving us, how they're, well, what response am I going to tell them next? What am I going to, let me just say one thing really quick. I'm going to interrupt you. Let them finish their conversation. Let them finish their thought and meditate in that. Because if you could get comfortable with someone, I could promise you, you're going to make a better relationship with them as well. Because you need to plant your feet, be who you are, exactly who you are. Don't think about faults, because you weren't made with faults. You were made with a purpose. Everything about you is made with a purpose. So be ready to give that back to that person. That's all.
Wow. Wow. Oof. I think this is really something that is so important for people to hear what you're sharing. They can take what they want to take from it, whatever resonates with them. But it's you speak about hardship and faith and healing and receiving love. You speak about it all in such practical terms. As far as I'm concerned, it's grounded in your experience, and it's grounded in what has been truly useful to you, and which is available to anybody. Like, it's not that you have to follow a certain religious path, or that you have to do, a specific kind of meditation. You're talking about these realities and the tools and your experience with them in a way that I think allows people to find the truth in it, for themselves. You're just offering really powerful ideas and ways of connecting truth to the practical side of life. I think you do such a great job of articulating that, John. And I hope that people listen and that their hearts are open, to hearing what you're saying. And it's a service, I think you offer a great service in speaking real. It's real talk. It's not confusing. It's not hard to understand. It's grounded in reality. It's grounded in knowledge and science and in your faith. And that's an important way to, in my opinion, to communicate, about our experiences. I'm really big in universal ideas and universal truths. So however we can all connect to something that really is a part of our human family. It's like, this is our species. This is the nature of who we are. Everybody's in a different place with that reality, but it's a good reminder that we're all in this together. We all have the same kind of struggles. We all have the same kind of not the exact same test, but kind of at the root of it, at the heart of it, a lot of it ends up being the same kind of tests. And I I'm just forever grateful that you've been so open to sharing
It's my
and
pleasure.
being vulnerable and being so encouraging and loving. And John, is there any final thoughts that you want to offer? Any insights, any final words you want to
Uh,
share with the listeners, the viewers to send them on their way?
I think an important thing to take from this is that if you thought that anything that I said was helpful or insightful, or if you go as far as to say, wow, that was great, understand that it did take a lot of work and it did take a lot of time of going through stuff. So it wasn't this magical button that I hit and I just felt better. It took time and it took dedication. It took searching for an answer. It took simply looking around and trying to find a place for yourself, right? And I think that we live in a world that's full of instant gratification, and we think that there's going to be a particular cure for what we're feeling, like some type of magical drug that we can just be prescribed and say, oh, okay, meditate twice a day. Okay. And it's gone, right? It takes time, it takes effort, it takes commitment to understanding that we're not perfect. If you're searching for perfect, then it's not going to happen. And it's becoming comfortable in your own skin. And that is the beginning of your relationship with yourself and with God. Because if you don't have a relationship with yourself and you're constantly beating yourself down, then there's no way to come back up. So you have to start being your fan and you have to start appreciating yourself so that you can begin to grow and heal.
Yes. And I always appreciate when people say, no one's perfect. You're not going to be perfect. It's such a good reminder, but also it's truth. And I think that bringing it back to shame and feeling worthy, or for those of us who have felt unworthy at times and have been shamed, there never was a perfection that we were supposed to live up to. We were just this is my way of articulating my understanding of what we're all doing here on this planet. It was never about, you must be perfect, or, oh, sorry, you're never going to be perfect, but sort of like the underlying message is, but wouldn't it be great if you were? That's not our reality. There is this high standard, that we can all reach for, but it was the message none of us should have ever, in my estimation, should have never received the message that we weren't good enough, AKA you're not perfect and you're never going to be perfect. Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you're saying.
It's like that was never supposed to be the messaging as far as I'm concerned. The message is that we were created with our own unique set of gifts and skills and abilities I've heard it described as like we each have our own blueprint, or we each have our own design. And I think about it as we're all here to make our own contribution for the greater good. And we can do that in our most unique, authentic, creative ways. It was never about perfection. And it was never about like, oh, I know I'm not perfect, but man, it's too bad that I couldn't be. It is about evolving and progressing, but not from a place of shame, not from a place of feeling unworthy or feeling that we don't have what we need. to live to the best of our abilities. We've got the tools.
There you go.
There are a lot of tools at our disposal. We just need to get clear about what the tools are and how best to utilize them. And so I think that can take some of the pressure off of feeling like I'm trying to reach this unattainable level or standard. In some ways, yes, there is this high standard that we can all reach for, but in the meantime, it's really, in my opinion, it's about being accountable, being honest for who we are, taking responsibility for who and what we are, and getting clear about what we are not responsible for, and not worrying about the perfection, but focused and inspired by what's the best version of myself, the most noble version of myself that I can aim for. And that's what I really want people to hear in terms of what I have to contribute to this conversation. You've already dropped many gems.
God bless you for saying that. That was beautiful.
It's so important, and it's not easy to unravel all the learnings or the messaging that we've all, many of us have received. But I just wish everybody well on the journey of finding the healing they need, finding their inner joy, like you said, and finding themselves and developing a relationship. It can look however it needs to look. It just, as long as, we're taking care of ourselves. Absolutely. And I think that we just have so many, like you were talking about in your personal experience, the obstacles or the blocks that you had a tendency to put in front of you because of what you believed, what you were told about yourself. But that's so common for so many of us, right? And so I just think, let's just remove those boulders, or whatever analogy we want to use, or metaphors, let's just lighten the load. Lightening the load doesn't mean that you're like chilling and like not being productive in life. Lightening the load just means making it easier so we can be our best selves and be our noble selves, right? And be our authentic selves. And I just want to help people lighten the load. And like you've said so many times, like not bring in judgment. So thank you for sharing in this conversation with me. And I always ask my guests, John, at the end, which TV show, new or old, do you recommend and why?
Oh my gosh. My wife, Crystal, makes fun of me for this one. I watch it almost like whenever I can. Maybe like once a month, I'll go to sleep watching this movie. It's King of Kings. It is an older movie. I think it was maybe back in the 60s it was released. It was the story of Jesus Christ, but it was portrayed really beautifully with, if I'm being completely honest, ridiculously overly attractive people. Jesus was this beautiful blue-eyed man, and it's a bit ridiculous, but I love it. There's just such a beautiful piece about the show that it doesn't, there's not a lot of religious movies that just focus on being peaceful and loving. It shows this really peaceful, loving side that is in the Bible. And I want to say what Tiffany said about taking accountability for our actions, what's not our actions. I wanted to say everything you said. That's what the Bible teaches me. To me, it's a book of teaching you, hey, take responsibility and say you've done wrong once in a while, and admit that you're not perfect in that way where it's like you were never supposed to achieve perfection. But anyways, I'm going to keep this podcast going for an hour. So yeah, I would recommend King of Kings. It's a beautiful movie. It just gives you peace. And then if you wanted to talk about a TV show, Oh man, I can't remember the last time I watched anything. I think Crystal said the same thing, other than like Coco Melon or something like that.
The
The kids
children's
kind of take
programming.
over the TV. Shoot, what is the last thing that I've watched on television? Trying to rack my
And it's
brain for some.
okay. It's okay if you
Yeah,
just have a movie, that's fine. No
right.
worries. You don't have to scrounge up a TV show. I chose that as a question when I first started the podcast. People do offer some
I'll
interesting.
stick with King of Kings.
That's perfect. John, thank you so much. I want you to know that I recognize the nobility in you, and I am grateful that I'm your friend, and also that I'm friends with your wife. And I appreciate you, and I'm wishing you more success and joy on your journey of your evolution in this
Thank you so much.
world. Thank you
Tiffany,
for being here.
I feel the exact same. We're so grateful to know you. I personally am grateful to know you. I always enjoy our conversations, and that's where the enthusiasm came from. That we're constantly kind of bouncing by each other, getting up maybe a 10-minute conversation. And so I wish you all the success, and I really pray that people get to hear this, because you have a beautiful message to share.
Thank you, and thanks for contributing to it.
All right.